This is the very first power supply that I ever built, and I made a tremendous amount of mistakes with it, as you'll soon see. Starting with the banana jacks on the front. Those should be 3/4 of an inch to 19 millimeters center to center. I randomly just put them wherever I thought looked nice and did not consider the fact that it mattered about the spacing. I also forgot to include the green banana jacks, as you can see there in the center. Those originally weren't there. I did not have any way to tie to earth ground or chassis ground from the outside of the supply. I've added those since then, tried to make some improvements upon a project that I would consider a fail. Also, you see that it's a dual supply and that it has 5 volts and 12 volts, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I'm going to mount the camera above so I can show you all the mistakes that I made and mistakes that still remain. Now, I hope that you guys can see this. I've got and this is powered on, by the way, so I can't touch anything. But I have the AC coming in, goes to the switch, and then goes to the fuse. Now, I want to point out that immediately that was the very first mistake that I made, is the fact that I had tied the neutral and the ground backwards on the AC inlet here, and I had actually fused the neutral side instead of the hot side. Now I have since fixed that to where it's correct, and my understanding is that you should always fuse the hot side or the live side, and that you should always switch and fuse the hot live side. Now also the second mistake that I made was that the fan probably wasn't necessary. It certainly doesn't hurt anything, but except for the fact that it's an unnecessary draw. I would have been much better off going with larger heat sinks, which I'll get to in a second. Now, the transformer, this is only a 12 volt 1.8 amp transformer, which is big enough for what I'm trying to accomplish here in the end. But when I originally built this, I had only used a tiny transformer. I used a 6 volt 606, which is a 12 volt center tap transformer, 6 volts on each side, and it was a 500 milliamp transformer. It was tiny, and I had used just too small of a transformer to do anything with it. I mean, if you've ever tried to use a transformer that small to even turn a fan motor, it's ridiculous. And so the next mistake that I made was that I had originally mounted the bridge rectifier on a separate board to the left over here, which was unnecessary. I've since then moved it over here to the same board to simplify matters. I used a bridge rectifier that's probably too big for what I needed here, but it's what I had in stock. Now, I have two voltage regulators, 7805 and a 7812, that are running in parallel, which is, my understanding, is a big no-no. You should never do that. And not only that, but they share the same giant cap, and that smoothing capacitor is a 6800 UF capacitor, 50 volt. Now that's way overkill. It's way too big. It's an expensive cap, and I should have had a cap for each regulator at the very least. So again, I do have chassis ground over here tied to earth ground, and I've got it tied to the port coming in for the AC plug, and I've now got the earth ground tied to the front green ports. Of course, I can't do anything about the spacing because I've already drilled the holes and made the damage to the case the way that it is, so I'm just going to leave it alone the way it is for now. Now, I should have used panel meters, voltmeters that had amperage on them. This is a fixed voltage, but it would have helped to know what the amps was coming out. So as you can see, I've made a lot of mistakes here, and not only that, but you see all the wires, they're everywhere, and that's kind of a big no-no too. I mean, the wires need to be as short as possible to make the run that they run. I do have everything shrink wrapped with the shrink tubing, and that's a good thing. And as you can see on the switch here, that I've used spade connectors, which is the right way to do things. On the fuse, I did the same thing. I used spade connectors. I probably should have soldered that on instead of using the spade connectors on the fuse, but I'm not sure, what the standard is for that. Now, I 3D printed a fan guard, and that looks really nice on there. So overall, I consider this project a fail, but except for the fact that I did learn a lot from it. And I had also, forgot to mention, I didn't even have any protection diodes on these regulators. I had to go back and add those at a later point. And also there's no resistors to separate the regulators that keep them from the resistance in between them, and I'm not really sure exactly. I still don't understand that, and I hope somebody will comment and explain to me better what they meant by that. But on the blog, it said something about putting resistors in between the regulators to keep them from having problems. So, but other than that, I've made all the changes that were recommended to me. And so this is exactly how not to build a power supply. Hopefully when I build the next one, regulated power supply, it'll be done correctly. What I probably should have used for a transformer was a 24 volt center tap transformer with 12 volts on each side. And that way I could have run the regulators on the individual sides of the transformer with their own caps and everything. Now, again, this is how we learn. So be sure to take note of some of these things and do your homework. Use the heat sinks were not entirely too small. I forgot to mention that, and that's the most important thing of all. I've already got these soldered in. I would have to desolder them and move them, maybe even redo this whole board in order to get a larger heatsink in there. If they make a tall heatsink that's ample size but tall and skinny, I could buy those and put them in there. But I haven't found anything like that. I might have to make something. I know these are not big enough, but I do have a fan, going straight, right directly behind it. So far I haven't had any problems. Even though everybody's told me they're too small, I haven't had any problem with them overheating. And I have load tested it to about 500 milliamps, half an amp. And anyway, that's it.